Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sports Talk. I'm Jeff Sylvia.
And I'm Aaron Bolio, and it's a Washington weekend this weekend with the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Patriots all playing their respective teams from Washington. But this week we're going to focus a little bit more on Week 8. We're going to recap Patriots-Dolphins, take a look at some real surprising games and some surprising teams, along with brief conversation about the trade deadline for the NFL, which was Tuesday. Humongous shakeups in a lot of locker rooms and a lot of coaching staffs this week. A lot of firings and a lot of benchings. And we're going to get into a topic that not a lot of people are talking about. So,
all right. I just want to thank you for not making a headline out of me after you completely annihilated and destroyed me in fantasy football. Probably the worst loss I'll ever suffer in my entire life.
To give the folks at home some perspective.
As if you have
Those of you who love football but don't know much about fantasy football know enough that Drew Brees had a good weekend, and you would know that I had Drew Brees.
Yeah, and I had Andrew Luck, if that says anything. It was a shellacking, to say the least.
In a game where if you had won, you would have dethroned me and taken third place in our league.
Yeah, there was a lot up for stake that week.
I gained some breathing room, and my playoff hopes are very bright right now.
And mine, I think I'm tied for a three-way tie now in my position.
You need to if you finish in fourth, you make the playoffs, and that's the goal you should shoot for.
As long as I beat you.
Well, we'll see if it gets that far.
All right.
But anyway, the Patriots beat Dan Campbell, and the Miami Dolphins last Thursday. We didn't have a chance to talk about it last week as the recording schedule, but we do have a little bit of an opportunity to talk about what I think is probably the best performance by the defense so far this year. Second in maybe to the Dallas game. I would put just below the Dallas game just because they didn't allow a touchdown against Dallas. But regardless, very good performance by, I think, all stages.
Absolutely. And what I'm pulling away from this game is how far the Jets are from the Dolphins with that respect, and how easy this game was for the Patriots versus the week before. Even on the short week, it was all Patriots from the coin toss. The Dolphins were really never in it. To me, business as usual. They just find a way to win.
Yeah, and there was a lot of conversation before the game too, because Dan Campbell had taken over for Joe Philbin, and then they dominated Tennessee and dominated Houston. But then again, those are Tennessee and Houston, so This was the first real test for that team, and they looked just as bad as they did before Philbin left. They looked completely lost.
Well, the coach still, I think, brings a lot to that team. With the way he talks and the way he handles himself, it is just any other game. And, to me, I think he's going to be there for a little while anyway. I don't know who can possibly replace him, but, the team is going to get better. They're going to rally around him. They're not as terrible as we first thought, but they're certainly not as good as we first thought. Their depth isn't there. Their defense certainly isn't there. And Ryan Tannehill is having one god-awful season.
And the biggest shame, and I've said this before, especially with the money that they wasted on Ndamukong Suh. Big time. They have one of the most talented rosters in football, yet somehow can't find a way to get it together.
If you look at their roster up and down, it looks to me like the old Lakers in the '90s when they could put a bunch of prima donnas together and never find a way to win. They spent huge money, but they didn't fix anything. All they did was bring in big aging names, and as you can see, it's gotten to be a fiasco down there.
Oh yeah, and speaking of big aging names that were brought in to try to make a roster look better, the Colts had kind of a shaky Monday night, but I will give them credit. They came back at the end of that game.
Well, it's hard to tell for me if that was conditions or just Andrew Luck just depleting of skills, because, if you're playing a game like that in weather like that, you make that many piss-poor decisions. They tried to lose that game in the first and second quarter, penalty after penalty, just shooting themselves in the foot, drive after drive. I think at some point he had 2 interceptions and 3 throws. I mean, you can't win at this level in this league turning the ball over like they're turning the ball over.
Oh, especially because, we saw that Luck had the broken ribs, and they just fired their offensive coordinator this week, which is one of the big changes that came up. I think that's a big, good move for the Colts. And frankly, the way I've been seeing Andrew Luck this past few years, and I still think that he has probably the highest ceiling of any of the young quarterbacks in this league, and he could be the best once Brady is out. Brady and Manning have long gone, but that system, he is going to rot as a Colt. They either have to change the coaching staff or Andrew Luck needs to get the hell out of there because they're ruining his career right now.
Oh, absolutely. And ruining their opportunity, like we talked about before. And 2 points on that. The opportunity that they have with this team, Andrew Luck is a superstar, not playing like it now, but if you looked at last season, he certainly played well above what he was compensated. And he was getting, he was performing like a rock star, but not getting the rock star money yet because his contract wasn't up. When his contract comes up, he's going to get rock star money. They're not going to have, the ability to go out and surround him with players with the money they have today. And to me, they're missing a huge, huge opportunity. But I want to put this question at you. Next year, when all the dust is settled, the Patriots have their 5th ring, and the FU tour is complete, and Roger Goodell, who happens to only be around for the reason of handing
loses
the
the next
trophy to Tom
appeal,
Brady.
loses the next appeal hearing, and all that stuff.
All this is done, and we're looking at next year. Boy, a pretty good opportunity for Patriots offensive coordinator being head coach again.
That would be
McDaniel.
That's a good
system.
I was thinking the other thing too.
That's a good system for McDaniel.
It would be. I think the biggest thing that they have a problem with in Indianapolis, they need to get rid of Ryan Grigson, the GM, because that's the number one issue. They have failed to get any sort of talent around Andrew Luck, and I think that Josh McDaniels could do wonders with Luck. He needs some other weapons, and Andre Johnson and Frank Gore aren't going
to do it for him. And the other thing I took away from that contest is, even though Carolina is still undefeated, they're definitely a different team to be contended with, especially, with Cam Newton back there. He just changes the game. But I do not see him or that team at a level that can compete with the Patriots or even the Jets for that matter.
I wouldn't say Jets. I think Carolina is for real, but they showed that they can be exploited. And even though Green Bay, oddly enough, was the undefeated team that got knocked off this weekend, I was so sure it was going to be Denver. But
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that when we get to that. But I still think Green Bay is better than Carolina. Carolina can be exploited, and Green Bay and Carolina are going to be playing each other next week, as we'll get to in the pick section. So that's I think that'll be Carolina's biggest test of the year, and I have my doubts about that one.
Interesting matchups this week with a few surprises. Certainly not Patriots-Dolphins. We had picked that one from the get-go. Chiefs all over the Lions. I think we both saw that coming.
Oh my God, that was as bad of a performance as I've seen from the Lions this year.
They're just getting worse.
Everyone kept talking about how close they were to beating Seattle, how close they were against to beat Denver, how close they were in all these games. There's no excuses for this one.
No, none whatsoever. And if you look at the game now with the Cardinals and Browns, there's another situation where the Cardinals try to lose that game early and often. They let the Browns in that game in the first half. They're marching down. Larry Fitzgerald, I think, fumbles in the end zone or something happens close with that. And Browns take it all the way back, score, and, they're in the halftime. They have life. The Cardinals let them in that game so many times, but still found a way to win with that offense.
Yeah, they showed a little bit of resiliency, which I think is key. It's hard to pinpoint what the Cardinals are right now. Their losses have been so bad. They've been kind of inconsistent these last few weeks, but we've seen how good they can be on both offense and defense. So
that's just a question of which Cardinals team is going to show up.
Jury is still out on that team, but they need to stay healthy.
And another team that tried to lose and ended up victorious was the Bengals. Boy, those guys, man. It leads into what everybody knows to be about the Cincinnati Bengals. They will play okay and sometimes better than okay in the regular season, but boy, against a team that's going to crank it up that extra notch, they cannot, and still, in my estimation, looking at the way this team played, will not compete in the playoffs despite their unbeaten record.
Oh, the saddest thing is, it kind of goes to that Dolphins thing. That roster is one of the most talented in the league.
Despite their quarterback.
It is ridiculous.
Despite their quarterback.
Name a position. I'll even give Dalton some credit. Right now, he's playing out of his mind. Right now, he is. But you name a player on that team, they're at least halfway decent.
Well, I go back to coaching and quarterback. You look at Lewis and Dalton. Yeah. You look at Lewis and Dalton for that team, and they are certainly not Belichick and Brady. And more often than not, in a clutch situation, there's a pick. I mean, there's always a pick. You can almost count on Andy Dalton to throw a pick when they need it the most. But he's not there.
The biggest thing that came out of that game was Le'Veon Bell is now out for the season.
Huge.
And it feels like,
everybody's collapsing around the Patriots.
I know.
It feels like. It does.
I hate to just be a homer all the time. But it was like, a couple weeks ago, I kept saying the teams that could be a threat or the teams that would be close. And I said, Pittsburgh and the Jets. And Pittsburgh lost Bell. And now the Jets, they're having that quarterback controversy we talked about, except they're talking about which quarterback they have to get off the scrap heap to make up for the fact that now both of them are down.
And, I thought that they stood a chance with Fitzpatrick. I mean, he's not, the best, but he certainly can lead a drive.
With that defense.
With that defense.
They can win.
They could have won. And, it's kind of like Peyton Manning's year going.
But you know what? All the credit in the world to Oakland. Now they have a winning record. And if you can believe it, in a playoff spot right now.
And, my only shining light this week was that I picked the Oakland Raiders.
We both did.
Yes, we did.
We both liked that upset.
All right.
I do have a quick question for you since we're on that. It's kind of like one of those what-if sort of questions, but Oakland Raiders, St. Louis Rams, Minnesota Vikings, New York Jets. All four of those teams didn't make the playoffs last year, and all four of them, I think, are currently holding a playoff spot or very close to because of how good they're playing this year. Which of those do you think most likely gets a wild card berth when January comes around?
Wow, that's a really good question. The Jets should get it, but I think Oakland is the X factor. If Oakland can continue to play like they're playing, I'm going to lean toward Oakland.
I think the best team out of those four is Minnesota. But because of the circumstance, with the AFC being a little crappier and Oakland already having some big tiebreakers, I think Oakland has the best chance of making the playoffs, oddly enough.
I do too. All right, let's talk about what was the shootout in New Orleans. Oh, my goodness.
And can you believe it was special teams at the very end? Not just, it was, as awesome as it was watching Eli and Drew Brees light it up, I couldn't believe the second to last play of the game where the punt return went almost halfway there, and then you get the punter getting a face mask call to set up the game-winning field goal.
Unbelievable. What a game that was, though. Back and forth we went, and, record 7 touchdowns for Drew Brees. An ungodly amount of yards, third most points, I think, in NFL history. And, that game, the Giants go into halftime down big, and you sit there, they're already 49 points, I think, up on the board at that time for New Orleans, who kind of took the second half off and then lit it up at the end. But, boy, if you're the Giants, you're sitting there in the locker room going, well, yeah, we've given up 49 points now. How in the world are we going to win this game? It was pretty damn close.
And it was like the only times defenses made a play, there was a turnover, I think, Giants fumbled it, and then New Orleans recovered, and then New Orleans threw a pick right back, and it was like the only time there was defense, it was at the same time.
It was like 42 points. I think they'll put one up at the end, but it was amazing to me how far down the Giants went in at halftime and came back out and found the resilience and the offense. Where the hell did that come from?
And now both of those teams are 4-4, but they're very different 4-4. New Orleans' 4-4 is awful because they are in the same division as Atlanta and Carolina. Meanwhile, the Giants at 500 are leading their division. Oh, that is such a terrible NFC East.
No worse than Indianapolis leading at 3-5 in their division.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
Disgusting.
The 4-4 New York Giants are leading a division that isn't as bad as the freaking AFC South.
It's so true. Bucks and Falcons. Who saw that coming? Everybody saw the Falcons take a big dump down their leg, and the Buccaneers pull that out 23-20.
The Buccaneers have beaten the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints in the Georgia Dome and the Superdome, if you can believe that. This team, a team that usually goes into those domes hoping that they don't get too many black eyes and don't break too many bones, are beating these teams now.
And probably for nothing, because they're not going to be a factor down the road, at least as far as I can see.
I'll give some credit to Jameis Winston. He's turning the ball over a lot, but he's showing promise. He's showing, I think, a lot more promise than some of the other young quarterbacks that have come out in the league recently.
Boy, talking about finding a way not to win, the Cowboys handed the Seahawks a 13-12 victory.
I couldn't believe, I mean, Seattle, I use the term jury's still out. I'm going to say that about Seattle, too.
Sure.
It looked like they were turning around. I wouldn't be so comfortable if I was a Seahawks fan after that win. It was, especially, I think if Tony Romo was in that game, would have been a lot different too.
Whole different game. And, not for nothing, their offense is not clicking the way we've seen it in the past. And that defense, you can see, is only so good. I mean, they're holding the Cowboys to 12 points, but that's as you mentioned, Tony Romo-less Cowboy team, which you can see he means a lot to that team. He means a lot to that team.
The offense, though, for Seattle is, I think, the biggest concern for them because
huge concern.
They weren't superstar level, but they were very good. And they bring in Jimmy Graham, and I thought that was going to be the difference maker for that team, where their offense, definitely starts shining, and Wilson has a weapon, but they're not connecting, and it's looking worse, even though they really haven't lost anybody.
They should have improved and did improve on paper, but on the football field, it's just not translating. And talk about not translating. The Chargers, what the hell is going on with the Chargers? I pick them every week, and I thought this week was a sure pick because they're playing the Ravens. The Ravens find a way to put up 29 points.
It has to be the hardest team to be a fan of right now.
How can you possibly figure these guys out?
And you know what the saddest thing is it's not like they're just getting blown out every week. It's like
they're in every game.
Their record could easily be a winning record if it weren't for like 3 plays this year. So I mean
with nobody to work with.
I could not believe that happened. But Steve Smith, legendary career, could be over now. He's out for the season. He did say he was going to retire. There's a chance he might come back next year and say, I don't want to go out like that. I didn't finish my career, but I'm not counting on that. So this might be the last we see of Steve Smith.
And I think you're right. I mean, with a future Hall of Famer like that, that's been around as long as he had, there isn't anybody, I think, that wants to see him come back if he's not going to be what we've all expected to see in the past. And he is the leader of that team. Next to Joe Flacco on offense, that team runs through him and Joe Flacco as far as the passing game goes. They find a way to put up 29 points. Where does the passing game from them go from here?
I don't know. It's
really.
I mean, they're going to be drafting wide receivers next year. That's all I can tell you.
All right. Bears and Vikings. Vikings find a way to win. They come back in that game, and they're again a good indication of a good playoff team. Vikings come back to win that game late. And certainly look like they're asserting themselves in that division.
Resilient. They were down. They were down last week against Detroit. They're down this week against Chicago. They held, and even the losses they suffered, they held in there all the way to the end with Denver. And if it was just a couple plays at the end that really screwed them up. But with only 2 losses this year, they're doing better than I expected.
They're definitely in the hunt, and with Adrian Peterson now running the football for that team and back to looking like the old Adrian Peterson, that team can be a good contender, when it comes to playoff time. Texans and Titans, no surprise there. Texans roll 2 of the worst teams.
And in the result, Titans head coach Ken Whisenhunt, who led the Cardinals to their first ever Super Bowl, is now jobless again. To be fair to Whisenhunt, I don't think even like the great Vince Lombardi could coach that team to greatness. Like that's just it's how bad the Titans are right now.
That's a terrible team in all 3 phases of the game. Speaking of terrible teams, the 49ers have just dropped off the map. The Rams roll right over them, and as a result of that game, a change as well. Colin Kaepernick gets benched, and the offense is absolutely dismal.
When you're picking Blaine Gabbert over Colin Kaepernick, there's an issue going on in your organization. But I do want to give a shout out to the Rams. Todd Gurley is like an offensive rookie of the year candidate
Big
right
time.
now.
Yeah.
I can't believe the numbers he's had. I can only imagine how good the Rams would have been if he started the year for them.
He's a force, and he's only going to get better. As you mentioned, he's a rookie, he's young, and he certainly brings a lot to that offense. And now teams have definitely got to put an accountability for him in their game plan, no doubt about that. Raiders over the Jets. Any surprises for you there?
No. I mean, well, it was kind of a weird game since Geno Smith went in. Geno Smith got hurt, and the injuries to the Jets made it kind of weird. But the Jets defense, who didn't have those injuries, they looked awful against the Raiders. It was like it felt like they were playing flag football. It was dreadful.
Do you think there's a hangover in that game coming off the Patriots game?
I don't know. You know what? I think it's more of just the Raiders. I think the Raiders are showing that they have a good, talented offense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Carr lighting it up there as well. Packers and Broncos, big surprise there. Not necessarily the score, not necessarily the outcome, but the score itself. Broncos all over the Packers. Never in this game looked very subpar. In Broncos defense, just controlling Aaron Rodgers and then.
I didn't have any doubts about that defense going in, but they really showed it. They really showed in that game. The big question mark was Peyton Manning actually had a pretty decent game. I'm really wondering if that's just an enigma because they came off the bye week and, it was a big game that week and they had the big Super Bowl 32 celebration and honoring the players. And that usually gets a team jacked up. So I'm not sure if it was that, but they also relied a lot more on the run. So I think Denver's run game is going to be a lot more weighted factor for them. But I'm really curious to see if Peyton's really back or if it was just coming off the bye week that helped him perform a little better.
I'm going to bring you back down to reality if you think that he's having some sort of superstardom resurgence or anything like that, for a couple of reasons. It's still warm. It's coming off the bye week. He's got time to rest, and I don't see this happening outside in January or December.
Oh,
There's
I
no
mean,
way.
even in his prime, that was his biggest weakness. But I think their run game is definitely starting to help them. That was the thing they were trying to start up for a while, and they finally managed to do it against a pretty good run defense with Green Bay.
Well, there's no doubt this team is for real. They certainly can run the football. They certainly can play defense. And I believe that they are a team right now that is evolving. As Peyton Manning is kind of winding down and maybe playing a little bit different game, he's learning to throw the curveball, so to speak, and this team is still finding ways to win. They're finding ways to come back and win. They're finding ways to hang in games still and win. And bottom line is they're still undefeated and beat another undefeated team, which we put right there, right next to the Patriots in the beginning of this broadcast and beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's going to be the game we circle this season.
And of course, Panthers over Colts. We touched upon that one earlier. No surprise there. I picked the Panthers all over the Colts, but I think weather conditions had a lot to do with that.
Oh, that was dreadful.
I think on a good day, I think the Panthers light it up and the Colts don't go anywhere. But still, to put up 26 points in that and a losing effort, it's funny because he looks good with stats, a couple of picks, but the scoreboard and the record.
Where those picks were killed them.
Really, especially 2 in like 3 plays, and they're driving down, close to the goal line in the red zone. Red zone fumbles and red zone picks are absolutely killing this team, along with penalties.
All right, before we get to our big topic, I got a quick rant. Quick rant. This regards to, we've been seeing, as we mentioned, there was a lot of shakeups this week. McCown is benched in favor of Menzel. That's the Thursday night game. Kaepernick. But this morning, as of right now, as we're doing this, the Lions have fired their general manager. Good move. But the big story that I've been seeing this week is Jim Caldwell is now whining about the media. And I hate it in any context because, we saw, I don't like getting into politics on the sports show, but we saw the Republican candidates complaining about CNBC's coverage in media, and now we got Jim Caldwell saying the Detroit media is too negative.
Jeez. You wouldn't last a week in Boston.
You are 1-7. Your team lost by 5 touchdowns. You have nothing to complain about, Caldwell. Yeah. What do you want them to say? I mean, if you were the Broncos, 7-0, but you still had people saying, Peyton can't throw anymore, I could understand why you'd be like, you guys are being too negative. We're undefeated. Give it a break. But you're not 7-0. You're 1-7.
No.
You are the worst team in the NFL. You're going to have to either improve, because winning is the best way to get the media off your back, or shut up.
Let's give you a sense of perspective here for a second. The Patriots, who are 7-0 and have won 4 titles here in recent history and win, excessively at home and mostly everywhere they go. Even during a winning streak like this, you look into the media, you listen to their head coach, you listen to everybody on that team, and there's always something that they're picking apart, something that they could do better, something that they need to improve on, something that, shown up in their game that they feel that could be better in practice.
We nitpick the secondary in like a 45-2 win. That's what we do.
Yeah. Can you see, never, ever in Boston would somebody like that last,
Oh, no, not a chance.
How do you feel about the NFL in sweeping the locker rooms? It was, first of all, the Jets had asked to have the locker room swept, but unbeknownst to everybody until later, it was reported that the New England Patriots went on record with the NFL asking them to sweep the locker rooms before the visiting team showed up because they're so freaking paranoid now that we're going to have another gate scandal. And the NFL refuses to do it.
I think it's incredibly hypocritical of the NFL. If you're going to make, you're going to have a multi-million-dollar scandal, you're doing a multi-million-dollar investigation to see if the team deflated footballs on purpose or not because you care about the integrity of the game. And then you have a team saying, hey, we want to make sure the integrity of the game is kept intact. You just need to do this one simple thing with the people that you already have at our stadium.
Sure.
And you just say, no, we're not going to do that.
Let's just take it out of the equation, as is the footballs. Let's just take the poundage of footballs out of the equation. Let's put it in the league's hands. Let them be responsible for all this stuff. But I'll tell you, you and I are huge sports fans, obviously. Everybody that listens to this program is huge sports fans. There is something about sports that I learned this week in sports franchises that is absolutely causing me to lose sleep, and it should cause you to lose sleep as well. And we're talking about paid patriotism. I'm not sure if you're or anybody out there is aware of this, but the Defense Department has budgeted $10 million this year to pay for, and let me paint a picture for you. When you're taking your kid out for a ball game and you're sitting there having your hot dog and you're watching the Red Sox at Fenway Park and they wheel the soldier out there and they're giving him a tribute, you thought in your head in heart of hearts that was, from being just a good sport and somebody with a big heart and somebody doing something out of respect for our soldiers. But no, they're paid to do that, and they bid to do that, and they sit in meetings to negotiate how much they're going to get paid to put veterans on the field to show them any sort of respect.
It just feels so sleazy, you know what I mean? It's just, it's that kind of, it cheapens it. It cheapens it so much. It cheapens what those soldiers actually have done, what they've actually been through when we have to negotiate this sort of thing. And you see it kind of get exploited too. Like we're seeing this month is the Salute to Service month for the NFL, and right now if you go on the NFL shop, because I browse from time to time, you can get a Tom Brady or really any player you'd like jersey that's like a special decked out salute to soldiers and all this crap, and it's like $50 more than the other jerseys, and it's just all this stuff, and none of it really goes to these to any sort of causes to help them. It's just sort of this you can wear now camo colors of your team. That's basically all it is. It's kind of a similar thing with the breast cancer. The breast cancer month was last month, and I learned recently that the NFL, I think only I don't want to give a number just because I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but the percentage of profits that actually go to cancer research are like less than 20. It is really slim, and it's the same thing with the Salute to Service. It pisses me off.
And not only that, $10 million. Look at what we could do with $10 million in VA hospitals. Or, we talk about homeless veterans in this country. 1 out of every 4 homeless people in this country is a veteran. And that's a staggering fact. And the fact that these people are putting down their lives, taking up arms, and going to serve our country overseas so we can have these sports, so these franchises can make gazillions of dollars. To me, it's an absolute no-brainer. I want to see the policy changed. I want to see sports teams just like, and kudos to the Patriots years ago, who were one of the first, if not the first franchise to start putting into contracts the community service visits to the hospitals and the sick kids and people like that. This should be a no-brainer. This should be part of the deal. There should be $0 that should be budgeted for patriotism in this country. End of story.
Oh, exactly. It's propaganda too. That's what it is. When you're watching the game and you're like, this is what it's about. And you have as you said, you have the soldier come out in the wheelchair. You have the Blue Angels fly over as the national anthem sings. It's just, it feels, as I said, cheapened. It feels cheapened when you realize the backdoor elements of it, and it just. Something that you like to think is sincere, something that you like to think is genuine,
right?
Is just. They can't do it.
No. And it all revolves around the almighty dollar. So with that, we're going to step out. When we come back on the other side, we're going to take a look at Week 9, maybe sprinkle in a little Celtics and Bruins. We'll be right back after this.
You can feel it coming. fall. When you're standing at the edge of the world, feels like a storm is brewing, bad weather is on the way. Hold tight and we'll get through this, coming home today to stay. I've been gone for so long, I don't remember where I'm from. I've got a long way to fall, and I'm standing at the edge of the world. Don't look forward, baby, don't look back. Just keep your head up now, keep your head up. Don't look forward, baby, don't look back. Just keep your head up now, keep your head up. Where there's smoke, there's fire, on that you can depend. I've never been a liar, the truth is my best friend. If you think you've made it, I'm gonna tell you how it is. You've got a long way to fall. When you're standing at the edge of the world, you've got a long way to fall. When you're standing at the edge of the world, long way to fall. Long way to fall. Long way to fall. Long way to fall.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, and we're on to Week 9 of the NFL, and it is time to break down those games and give us our picks for Week 9.
We had a good week.
We did have
We
a good
both
week
had a pretty good week.
and gained absolutely no ground.
Exactly. Well, you know what? That's good for me. Any week we have a wash is great for me.
Yeah,
because
it's a
it
push.
continues to add to my lead.
It's a push. It's a push. All right. So we've already picked the Thursday night game, which we'll reveal in a later show. Let's go right to the AFC East with Dolphins and Bills.
Dolphins and Bills. Bills coming off a bye week. I think Tyrod Taylor's going to be back. I'm going to go Buffalo.
I'm with you there. I think the Dolphins are right now going in the wrong direction and certainly not going to win on the road as far as I can see. Jaguars and Jets in New York. Tough
Jaguars
task.
and Jets. Oh, if you asked me that a week ago, I would have told you Jets without even thinking about it. But this week, they're missing both their quarterbacks. I'm going to go Jacksonville. I'm going to go Jacksonville just because we saw them 2 weeks ago against London. Jets quarterback situation's kind of a mystery. Jaguars, so see what they can do.
I can't believe we're both saddling up to pick the Jaguars this week, but I think I'm going to join you. I think we have one quarterback on the rise and one quarterback that they're still looking for, as you mentioned, out in the parking lot. We're going to be very interesting to see how this Jets team performs in a game it should win. Absolutely should win, especially with Fitzpatrick. This would have been a no-brain pick for everybody, but now everybody's kind of scratching their head and see which kind of Jets team is going to show up.
Oh yeah, I'd be scared if I was the Jets to be doing as good as they did and then lose the one thing that was helping them win.
Skins and Patriots, that's an easy pick for me. I'm going to roll with the Patriots. I don't think there's any chance that the Redskins can even stay in this game at all.
I'm going to stick to my routine of picking the Patriots at home and picking against the Washington Redskins at any given circumstance.
At any given time. Raiders and Steelers, the 1 o'clock game in Pittsburgh.
Big game this week because Oakland is 4-3, Pittsburgh is 4-4. This is for a tiebreaker in a potential playoff situation. Oakland.
Wow, I got to join you with Oakland. I think Oakland on the road, it's going to be a tough matchup going into Pittsburgh. But boy, I think this is where this team shows a little bit of resilience.
This will be their true matchup.
Yep.
This will be what determines what the Raiders are this season.
And I think we're both going to try to figure out, at this point, what the Raiders are made of. And this week is really going to be a test of that. That's for sure. 49ers and Falcons in San Francisco. I'm picking the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, Blaine Gabbert maybe could be slightly better than Colin Kaepernick, so it will only be a 38-point blowout instead of a 40-point blowout. But
Yeah,
no,
that team can't score touchdowns.
Falcons.
Pack it in, kids. Eagles and Cowboys. I'm going to take the Eagles in this one. Cowboys still trying to figure out who's going to play quarterback there effectively. And again, I think that even with Dez back, that offense still is not going to be itself until we see Tony Romo.
I hate to have 2 boring weeks in a row, but the Cowboys have not been able to win without Tony Romo, and I'm seeing improvement out of the Eagles. It's just I can't pick the Cowboys in this situation.
All right, well, we'll see what happens in this game. Packers and Panthers. Packers coming off a loss to unbeaten Broncos, and Panthers rolling right along, still unbeaten. Who do you like in this one?
I like Green Bay just because we saw the Colts exploit the Panthers a little bit last week, and the Packers are one of those teams where if they are coming off a loss, you want to be the last team playing them, even if you're undefeated Carolina.
I got to hang with you again and go Green Bay for a couple of reasons. I don't like the way the Panthers finished that game against the Colts. They let them back in it. They were lucky to escape with a win, even in the conditions. The Packers always, except for last week against the Broncos, seem to get stronger as the game goes on. I think they bounce back, and as you said, coming off of a loss, got to go with Green Bay. Rams and Vikings in Minnesota.
That's a potential game of the week. I'm gonna go St. Louis. I'm gonna go St. Louis. I love their front seven. They have probably one of the best pass rushes in the entire league. I like their chances of trying to contain Adrian Peterson, and then Todd Gurley's just been unstoppable.
Wow, this is a tough pick. Todd Gurley, of course, could be the difference there. I'm gonna pick the homers. I'm gonna pick the Minnesota Vikings. I think that they're finding ways to win, and I certainly think that they could find a way to win this week at home. It's a tough pick, though, man, because the Rams are playing so good, and
both teams are playing so good.
This is going to be definitely a playoff implication type game. And let me see here. That was last week. Let me go to week 9 real quick. And we're going to the Titans and the Saints. That's an easy pick for me, especially after watching Drew Brees last week. Just a question of, are they going to put up another 50 spot? Easy win for the Saints.
Titans have been too inconsistent. I'm going Saints.
All right. Bucks and Giants. Giants coming off that shootout loss in New Orleans, still putting up a lot of points, but boy, that defense looked horrible on both sides. What do you think, Giants and Bucks?
You know what?
In Tampa,
I'm going to go for an upset. I'm going to swing for the fence here. I'm going to go Tampa Bay.
You're going to be swinging for the fence. I'm going to take the New York Football Giants, especially after that loss and putting up that many points. I figure I'm going to go with the fact that they're going to clean it up a little bit on defense and find a way to go in there and beat Tampa Bay on the road. Colts and Broncos, easy pick for me. Broncos, 100%. Colts are going absolutely in the wrong direction. Even though they're at home, I think Peyton Manning comes in and embarrasses the Colts.
Same thing, too. Peyton Manning has his little homecoming back to Lucas Oil Stadium and probably won't light it up, but his defense will be more than enough to stop Andrew Luck and the Colts.
All right, here's a tough game to pick for me anyway, because my heart's been with the Chargers the whole time, but we get Chargers and Bears on Monday night. Boy, what a tough matchup, because both teams have shown that they can put up points. To me, the Chargers are not finding a way to win, but they're at home.
Neither team is finding a way to win. The St. Louis Minnesota game, we were torn on the two teams that keep finding ways to win. Now we're finding two teams that find a way to lose.
Yeah, I'm still going to go San Diego, even though they have a terrible record. They're absolutely going nowhere. I still think they're better than the Bears at home.
I'm going to go San Diego as well, just because every time I watch the Bears, it's just, San Diego, you keep getting a vibe that they can do it, and they do it against really good teams, and then Chicago is just out of it by...
Do have some injury concerns, though, as far as San Diego goes. That backup tight end, hurt, not participating in practice, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, Green.
Ladarius Green.
Very, very talented tight end, Ladarius Green, but even more talented tight end in Antonio Gates, so I don't think they're too worried about that.
Now that Antonio Gates is back. Do you see any other potential upsets in this week? I mean, there's so many games, I think, that could go either way, and a couple of them were tough to pick. Like Jaguars and Jets. The Jets could come out and, run the football. Chris Ivory could be, dominant, and they could be all over the Jaguars. You never know.
Dallas, Philadelphia could become a big upset. I mean, we saw Brandon Weeden hold his own against Philadelphia week 2 when Romo Berry first went out. I know Philadelphia's made some improvements since then, but, I mean, Dallas has been in the games they've been playing, especially the one 2 weeks ago against the Giants. They definitely looked like they were getting something together on offense, and their defense is still really good.
Even though, we're picking the Eagles, I think this is a much more important game for the Dallas Cowboys. Their season could potentially be over before Romo gets back if they don't find a way to win.
Say what you will about Greg Hardy as a person, and I think he's the most deplorable, despicable human being in the NFL who should be rotting in a jail cell right now. But he is damn talented.
He is.
And he's been helping that team stay in games.
Well, to me, there's issues right down from Jerry Jones and ownership. But if they're condoning that kind of behavior, there's a big difference to me between passion, controlled aggression, and out-of-control behavior. And Greg Hardy is the exhibit of that. To me, it's detrimental to the team, even though it is energy and he's trying to rally the troops. It's not the way to do it. I think there's other ways to do it on the football field. Let your play speak for itself. If you want to get pumped up, let's win some games. Let's make some plays. Let's not just rah-rah on the side of the sidelines.
And the thing that disturbs me the most about him, and it's the same thing that disturbs me for those of you who follow pop culture with Chris Brown, the Chris Brown-Rihanna situation, that domestic violence situation many years ago. It's one thing, like when we look at Ray Rice, whether you believe him being sincere about it or not, he went on a huge apology tour and basically said how he's trying to improve himself. And I don't know if I believe it or not, but at least there's an effort on his part to repent or try to show that he at least acknowledges he did something wrong. But when you see guys like Chris Brown and Greg Hardy, you never get a vibe that they even realize what they did. They seem more confused why everybody's so upset, and they have this kind of ego where they feel like they deserve...
It's toxic.
It's toxic.
It's absolutely toxic to their team, and it's toxic to the league. And unfortunately, there's so many examples now of players like that in the league. And I say this all the time. If you are gifted enough to where you have an opportunity to go out and make gazillions of dollars playing a game that you love, you also have a responsibility to the game, to its fans, and your community to be an upstanding citizen and a role model. And I think if you look at the percentage of players out there, there are less and less role models for kids these days, fans in their communities. It's the exception now, not the rule.
Well, you know what? I want to be fair to this because I see, you're constantly seeing, Russell Wilson visiting children's hospitals, and you see the entire Detroit Lions rookies visiting children's hospitals. You see J.J. Watt visiting as Batman. You see them, they're all trying to do different charitable events, and frankly, with this TMZ sort of culture we have now, it's events like domestic violence or Ray Lewis's alleged homicide. Those are the things that get the headlines. So I feel like it's more of our culture just kind of gets more attractive to scandal than they do about charity.
Everybody loves drama.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as heartwarming as it is to see someone visit a children's hospital, it's not really as entertaining or interesting, or there's not really any juicy details behind it. When you have something like Greg Hardy's situation, or you have something like the Ray Rice situation, that's when it gets a little bit different.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's now, like I said, the rule and not the exception, to where given any one or two players in any team, you're going to find people that have criminal records, domestic violence things going on, things going on with their kids. There's no clean slate anymore. And if you look across the NFL, it's getting much, much worse.
Oh, exactly. And I think of a story, I think it was Jerry Rice, who said something along the lines of, he came from one of these neighborhoods which are basically, football was the only opportunity he had. It was one of those, like, the education was poor. There wasn't really any real genuine way of trying to get out of that neighborhood and get into a better situation. The only real chances you had were be a superstar or join a gang. And he basically said, when I got the opportunities I did, I had a lot of questionable friends. I had questionable people who basically had to join those gangs, had to be part of crime and violence, and basically he had to say, I had to make a choice at that point whether I wanted to continue to be a professional and kind of separate myself from that or fall back into it. And that's the case with a lot of guys in this league. You see a lot of them come from really crappy situations, and it is really inspiring to see them make the change. But there's a few of them out there, like with Aaron Hernandez. We saw, he's had a lot of his association with some more than shady characters. And we've seen people who just can't do that and end up throwing their lives away because they couldn't escape who they were or where they were from. So, we see that a lot with the violence. But let's move on to a different topic.
I want to switch gears for a second with you, and I want to throw quarterbacks out there for a second.
Really?
And specifically what I want to talk about is you have quarterbacks like Tom Brady, who are pocket passers, Tony Romo, who's a pocket passer, Ben Roethlisberger, who's a pocket passer. And then you have guys coming up like Cam Newton, who is completely the opposite of that. And basically, college on steroids, running the option, running the keeper, keeping the ball and moving, with his legs, moving the offense with his legs. Is there a place in the NFL for a quarterback like him? Because we've watched RG3 fail miserably. We've watched that experiment just fail miserably in Washington. And it looks to me that if you're looking at quarterbacks coming out of college, those are the offenses that they're running. And there seems to be a huge gap in a pocket passer, intelligent quarterback, and a guy coming out that can just run the option.
It's a good question. I'm going to look back. Let's just think about the last 10 Super Bowls or so. Think about the quarterbacks who won that. So we had, Brady this year, Russell Wilson, who you would put in that category, but you could make debates that Marshawn Lynch was a bigger part of that offense that year, and their defense was a lot better. And then you kind of go back. Joe Flacco won it with the Ravens. He's more of a conventional pocket passer. Eli Manning, more of a pocket passer. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers, mobile, but not really a real,
right?
Mobile to get to avoid
not a lot of plays in that playbook to call his number.
He tries to find ways to get back into the pocket through evading pass rushes.
Right.
So I would classify him as more of a pocket. Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Eli again. Russell Wilson's the only real example where you could see a championship run come from it. Mm-hmm. But I will say, I think there is room. But you have to. It's trying to start with coaching, because we see a lot of these college guys come up thinking that they can just run around in circles, and that's just not going to work. But I would coach mobility, like what the Packers have with Aaron Rodgers, where you are try to throw from the pocket, but if the rush comes, they are trained and seasoned and ready to escape and make plays with their feet if they have to. And I've been seeing Cam Newton, and I think this is what's separating him from the rest of the quarterbacks from that read option era back in 2012. He will pick up plays with his feet if it's there, but his priority is the pass, and that's what he's paid to do, and that's what he tries to do, and that's what he does well. So I think if he sticks to that, there's a wide open space for this.
Well, that's part of the maturity process of a Cam Newton, because when he came in, he was looking to make a play with his legs first, and now, as you mentioned, he's looking to make a play in the air and extending the play with his legs. But to me, if you're looking at college quarterbacks and the way things are run there is a huge emphasis on the running quarterback, which obviously does not translate to the NFL. And it's simple. If you look at defenses in the NFL, you look at linebackers in particular in the NFL, they're bigger, they're faster, they can cover. Defensive linemen are now covering guys. It is just not the league for a quarterback to come up through that kind of system. And even if he may be successful for a period of time, the longevity period of a quarterback like that isn't worth the investment for any franchise.
Oh, and that's what I was saying to friends who would tell me that, Tim Tebow's getting, back in 2010, everybody was excited about Tim Tebow in the draft, and then last year everyone was excited about Menzel. I went, no. The flash in the pan thing that they're doing is going to work in college. It is not going to work in the NFL, and we have seen it. And the other thing, too, is if I was a general manager, I would be incredibly nervous about signing a guy like that because, as we've seen with Robert Griffin, the injuries are a big part of that, and I think that should take away value from a quarterback. If you're going to constantly do that, if you're going to constantly be mobile and try to make plays with your legs, be prepared to take less money because your career could end in a second, and we don't want to be the team that gets screwed over because of that.
And to me, it's the same mentality of maturity, and I want to drop back a little bit because the same maturity that I've seen Cam Newton exhibit growing into the quarterback now where he, can run the football, he can put his head down, he can run people over if he wants to. The guy is massive, but at the same time, his priority is to pass and thinking about being there another week. Well, if you look at Andrew Luck, there is so many interceptions coming out of that offense, and it's because he's just trying to make a play instead of, I guess just conceding that the play is over, throwing the ball out of bounds. He's trying to do too much, and I think that was something we've seen Cam Newton do less of, and now we've seen him do more of, and Andrew Luck.
I want to put a lot more blame on the coaching staff than I do on Andrew Luck. As much as I think Andrew Luck did need to improve, I feel like this coaching staff, they keep, the play calling for one is awful. It's
terrible.
Like, especially when he only has one receiver to throw to in T.Y. Hilton. What else is he supposed to do? And he has to force plays, but what the calls are trying to do. Try and train him to be more of a West Coast conventional style of offense. Try to teach him to do some short passes, especially when you have a bad offensive line like that. He could use that.
Well, we talked about it with Peyton Manning, and we've seen the adjustment where Peyton Manning started out under center, started out in the shotgun. Of course, you don't have a running game in the shotgun. He couldn't, get any protection going under center, trying to throw, a quick fade or a screen. But now we see Peyton Manning in the pistol, and it seems to be working very well because, he's getting the ball out quickly, and that's what we talk about with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is trying to make plays that take way too long to develop. That offensive line is not nearly good enough to give him the time in the pocket he needs to hold on to the football and let receivers get down the field like that. He's got to make his money, like you said, dinking and dunking over the middle and more of a West Coast offense.
And I hate when teams will have to rely on the long ball, and we've always seen it when Peyton Manning was with the Colts over the years, and we saw it, I think, back in 2007 when the undefeated season was ruined. They relied too much on trying to go deep. They kind of lost their way, and then when you go up against a team like the Giants with a great pass rush, they can exploit it. It's one of the easiest things to exploit once you rely on it. And I think that's a big problem with the Colts, and that's why they can't get anywhere, is because they are relying on a technique that is not going to be successful in the playoffs. It's going to be great against the Titans and the Jaguars twice a year, but it's not going to really help them once they have to get into the nitty-gritty in January.
Interesting statistic about Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts. They are 17-2 in their division and 18-7 outside of their division. That is Andrew Luck's career stats.
It's a cupcake division. It is the worst division in football right now. We're seeing it. They're leading it as the 3-5 team.
Unbelievable.
But as we start running down, I would, we are the Sports Talk Show. I would like to say congratulations to the Kansas City Royals on their first championship in 30 years.
That's fantastic.
It was they were a fun team to watch. It's hard to say that now because a lot of people, and I'll admit too, baseball can get really hard to watch. It's slowed down a lot, but Kansas City is one of the few teams that's been really fun. And I'll say the Game 5 they had against the Mets, they finally close it off. Overall, that was an incredibly fun game to watch, but there was a little bit of controversy in that. But
there was.
I will start by saying Matt Harvey, even though the Mets ended up losing, those first 8 innings played out of his mind. It was like, you don't have a lot of fun watching a pitcher. That was fun watching that pitcher.
No doubt.
It was one of those performances where it looked like he was in complete control. Like he didn't, he looked confident. And the batters looked scared of him. He knew exactly what to do in every situation. But when the 9th inning came along, that's when the big controversy came.
I want to talk about this because to me, this is something that is getting in pitchers' heads in this generation, just like we're seeing with the 33-yard extra point. I could care less about pitch count. To me, pitch count is something that has been a made-up atrocity as far as trying to control players and give them some false securities as to how they're going to extend their careers. We watched pitchers, I did anyway. I'm old enough to watch pitchers back when I did, when there were so many complete games. Guys like Steve Carlton would throw to his arm fell off, and he'd still be back in the rotation 4 days later. I think the 100 pitch count is something that's just getting in their heads, and I think this was huge evidence of that for the New York Mets.
Oh, it was. And if you want even a good comparison of it, you don't even have to look back to your day. Just look in the world.
Thanks.
Well,
we're going to get that one on the blooper reel, I'm
you
sure.
said that. You said it. I didn't say it. You said it. But no, anyway, look at the World Series last year against the San Francisco Giants, the exact same Kansas City Royals team. Madison Bumgarner, Game 7, had another spectacular game, and he lasted all the way into the 9th inning and finished that game off and won a well-deserved MVP trophy from it. So, I think that was a big issue with Matt Harvey, and it does kind of go down to managing skills too, because I think after the first walk, that was the big red light that said you have to get Harvey out because. And this is I think one of the reasons why this Royals team has been so fun to watch this postseason. And this is gonna be the weirdest metaphor I'll give in my life. It's kind of like putting your car in neutral and just start pushing it down a hill, because once it gets the slightest bit of momentum, it's gonna start going.
It's gonna go on.
That's what the Royals have been this year. It's like the second a guy gets on base,
oh yeah,
you have like a 50-50 shot of him ending up scoring the run.
Well, that's their whole roster. I mean, you look up and down that roster, every position is a potentially dangerous position as far as hitters go. Every single guy can hit on that team. You don't have lulls in the action. If you're an opposing pitcher, you got to account for everybody up and down that whole roster.
And I think the second it went into extra innings too, because that was a spectacular ninth, spectacular play to tie it up. I think Citi Field went silent because you could tell. I think everybody knew that they were going to lose the game at that point because
they just saw it coming.
Their starting rotation is decent, but that bullpen, the second the bullpen has to go out, that's when you start worrying. And that's the thing about Kansas City is they don't have to win the game in the 5th inning or before that. They just have to buy themselves enough time. Because once the bullpen is out, the game ends up in their control. And the longer that went on, the scarier it was. And then the second, when it got to about the 11th inning and you started seeing Wade Davis warming up in the bullpen, you were like, okay, this game's over. Kansas City's going to be the champion at the end of this.
I'll tell you what I loved most about this World Series is that the Mets didn't win. I lived through 86. Mets suck, Jets suck, Giants suck. They all suck. If you're from the Yankees, suck. All right.
Oh, it's just the personal vendetta, and what the other nice thing is we'll wrap it up. As I said about the Chicago Blackhawks when they won the Stanley Cup, over the Tampa Bay, and New York's a big baseball city, but I'm so glad to see Kansas City. That is a huge baseball city. Finally managed to get a championship there after 30 years, well deserved, and that team. Great things could come from them next year, too.
Oh, yeah. That don't come out for next year either. So congratulations to the Kansas City Royals, world champions, and we want to thank you all for watching us this week. We want to thank all of our crew on behalf of my co-host Aaron Bolio and myself. We'll watch you and catch you next time.